that better?
Better.
All right. Well, I'm going to take this down for a minute. I'd like to introduce the head. We have multiple head tables tonight. We've got the selectmen sitting in the front row, and Select Board Chair Peter Georgianis. Please recognize yourself. And then we've got Vice Chair Chet Bowen. And then we also have Collis Adams. And then we have Jim Craig at the end. And we have Mark LeMay. That's the board. We also have Town Administrator. Oh, you are? Yeah. All right, Derek Horn. That's Derek. And Assistant Town Administrator Danielle Barassa. She's in the back. Thank you. You think that's going to help?
Yeah, it should help. Definitely help. Do you have a pocket in here?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry about that. This should definitely.
Okay. Now, other dignitaries who may be in the audience tonight include Budget Committee members Joe Alexander Jr., Chairman and State Representative, Fred Platt, Vice Chair and State Rep, Stacy Belmore, thank you, Spencer Diaz, Lauren Dukas, thank you, Greg Flegel, Dennis Lynch, Bill Cordes, Richard Manzo, Evelyn Redmond, Melanie Renfrew-Hebert, Skylar Sund, Richard Fletcher, he's a Goffstown Village Water Precinct representative to the Budget Committee. Jared Talbot, School Board Rep to the Budget Committee. And Selectman Mark LeMay, sitting over there. Then we have our state reps, Joe Alexander, thank you, Barbara Griffin, Fred Platt, Claire Roulard, and John Burt. All right. Our State Senator Lou D'Alessandro. All right. And that's the dignitaries. Now I'm going to go through some, I'll try to do it as in prompt fashion. Going back to 1996, at town meeting, the town voted to adopt Senate Bill 2. And that's a standardized official ballot referendum system. And we've been operating under that SB 2 ever since we adopted it in '96. We're operating, obviously, in the school, and we're trying to be respectful of rules that pertain to the school in terms of COVID, which includes wearing of masks unless you're talking or eating or something. Printed copies of what the rules are available at the desk when you checked in. Registered voters have been given a voting card. It was green or yellow. And please make sure you sign it. And if you leave before the meeting ends, You'll be asked to return those cards to the table. The cards must be displayed during a standing vote. We might have a standing vote. Show your card. All speakers at the microphone must display their voting card. In other words, if you're coming up to talk at that microphone right there in the middle of the room, show your card. And spell your last name and provide your address for the scribe. Again, if you're coming up to speak. At tonight's meeting, Articles 12 through 23 will be open for discussion, debate, and amendment. This deliberative session allows the same range of possible amendments which voters have always had under the traditional town meeting system. If an amendment to any warrant article is adopted, the article as amended will appear on the official ballot for voting on March 8th, which is voting day. The printed rules for this meeting were on the table. They include the important, among other things, the important information as follows. It covers proper amendments and the process for presenting one this evening, how to request a written secret ballot, that's included all on this form, this handout, the parliamentary procedure to move the previous question or end debate, a motion for reconsideration, and a motion to restrict reconsideration. Does anyone here have any questions about the rules of this meeting? In other words, how we're going to operate the meeting. Okay? Finally, I will not tolerate, and never did tolerate, derogatory comments to be made about any speaker or person in the hall. So please just be civil. I need a motion to dispense with the reading of the warrant. Okay, we've had a motion. It's been seconded to dispense with the reading of the warrant. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so we won't read the whole warrant. We'll take it up article by article. Excuse me. Article 12 is the town's operating budget. I recognize Selectman Lemay. All right, do you wish to be heard?
I apologize, first of all, for not having my mask. I can't talk with that mask and think at the same time. I would like to first off say thank you very much for everyone for attending this evening. It's a very important meeting for us to share, and we have a lot of information to go through tonight. I'm going to read Article 12, which is basically the operating budget. As I read it, the town administrator, Derek Horn, will show some slides up on the board. So let's start. I have like a 2.5, almost 3-page statement to say. The town operating budget consists of two funds, the general fund and the sewer enterprise fund. EMS ambulance expenses are excluded in the operating budget and the default budget. At the request of the Department of Revenue Administration, the EMS Special Revenue Fund appropriation has been moved to a separate article, Article 13. If Article 13 fails, the EMS operation will be funded by the general fund. The purpose of the operating budget is $26,753,134. We will focus this presentation on the general fund, as that is the only fund which impacts the town property taxes. The general fund budget has an increase of approximately $2.5 million over the last budget year. This increase on the expense side is offset by increase to the general fund revenues of $1.3 million. As you can see, the purpose of the general fund budget is approximately $1.4 million more than the default budget, and that'll be explained up there as well. The general fund budget includes a replacement of a fire truck. This is budgeted at $775,000 in the CIP and includes 100% offsetting revenue from the fire apparatus capital reserve fund. This fire truck and offsetting revenues is not in the default budget. This accounts for over half of the difference between the default and the operating budget. Now let's look at the rest of the increases for the general fund budget. The general fund budget now includes 4 new firefighters funded by the 2021 FEMA SAFER grant approved by the voters last March. This is an increase of approximately $310,000 on the appropriation side, with the FEMA grant providing 100% offsetting revenues. These firefighters and offsetting revenues are in both the default and operating budget because the multi-year article was approved last March. Contractual increases for 3 union members approved prior to town meeting. This includes DPW Teamsters, police officers, and police dispatchers and clerks. These increases are both the default budget and operating budget because they were approved by the voters. The collective bargaining agreements for the professional firefighters of Goffstown will be discussed in Article 14 later on this evening. There is the increase of the employer contribution rate by the New Hampshire retirement system that took effect July 1st, 2021. The 2021 budget had half of the increase from July 1st through December 31st. The increased employer rate hits the entire year of 2022 budget. The budget includes the following personnel costs that are not in the budget. A 3% wage matrix adjustment for non-union employees in the library, at the library. 3% wage matrix adjustment for other non-union employees in town. Step increases for eligible non-union employees. The budget includes 1 new full-time employee for the Parks and Recreation Department. This new position will focus on grounds maintenance as the Parks and Recreation cares for 27 athletic fields in town, as well as the schools and town property at this time. The budget includes increased hours at Town Hall Land Use Office. There is a proposed which switches from 2 part-time employees to 1 full-time employee and 1 part-time employee in building and assessing. If Article 12, the operating budget, fails, the default budget for the general fund, EMS and SOAR Enterprise Fund shall be $25,906,840. This article has been recommended by the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee.
Floor is open for discussion. Does anybody have any questions or wish to be heard? I don't see any hands. So, yes.
I would move to restrict reconsiderations of Article 12 at this time.
Is that? All right, there's been a motion made to restrict reconsideration of Article 12, and that motion was seconded. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll move on to the next article. 13. Article 13 is to appropriate from the EMS Special Revenue Fund. I recognize Selectman LeMay.
Mr. Moderator, I move Article 13 to the floor. Second. Thank you, sir. The EMS Special Revenue Fund was established back in 2001, and 100% of all revenues collected from EMS operations is deposited into the fund. Traditionally, the EMS Special Revenue Fund budget has included as parts of overall operating budget appropriation articles as well. In 2017, the Department of Revenue Administration issued guidance that all appropriations for special revenue funds should be made in separate warrant articles because they require an affirmative annual vote by the legislative body. The article asks voters to fund 2022 EMS operations from the EMS Special Revenue Fund, with no funds to be raised by taxation. The proposed 2022 EMS budget is $492,851, which is a decrease from last year. This decrease is primarily due to the ambulance purchase in 2021. If Article 13 passes, Article 12, the operating budget, will be reduced by the amount of the EMS operations. If Article 13 fails, the EMS operations will be funded through taxation. This article is recommended by the Select Board and the Budget Committee.
Any questions, discussion on this article?
Mr. Moderator, I move for reconsideration of Article 13.
Okay, there's been a motion made to restrict reconsideration of Article 13. That motion has been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll go to the next article. That motion passed. Article 14. Article 14 is the collective bargaining agreement for the professional firefighters of Goffstown. I recognize Chairman Georgianis.
Mr. Moderator, I move Article 14 to the floor. Article 14 is the article with the collective bargaining agreement with the professional firefighters of Goffstown. This is a 3-year contract that covers 25 positions at the fire department. It includes the town fire inspector, 4 fire lieutenants, and 20 firefighters. The Select Board negotiated this 3-year contract with a goal of improving recruitment and retention of firefighters. The CBA also implements changes to reflect the 24/7 schedule that was achieved in 2020 in partnership with the union. During the current 3-year CBA, the town saw 8 firefighters and 1 lieutenant leave for other departments in the state. The town benchmarked their wages against similarly sized fire departments in the southern New Hampshire. In the proposed agreement, the new probationary firefighter would start at $22 an hour, which is the average for the departments in our area. The average Goffstown firefighter will have a base wage rate of $22.84 at the end of 2022, following the average of areas in other departments in our areas. Modest increases in 2023 and 2024, as well as a new master firefighter rank for those firefighters with a high level of training and experience, are intended to keep the CBA competitive and retain current employees. Negotiations, the town was able to improve contract language for insurance opt-out, longevity, military, and FMLA leave. This article is recommended by the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee.
Floor is open for discussion, questions, comments. Yes, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Come to the speaker, I couldn't see whose hand was up.
Thank you for taking the question. I have to say I was here last night, and the information presented on contracts by the school district was much more informative and descriptive of what you were actually asking the voters to propose in comparison to other communities. So my specific question is, what exactly would a modest increase be?
The hourly is $1.39 property.
I guess a modest increase is how you look at it, right? So a modest increase in the first year is 8%. And that's due to the market base. We base that on the market in the area. Average hourly would be about $1.39, or annually $3,345. Does that answer your question, Barbara?
It's a 3-year contract.
Pardon me?
It's a 3-year contract.
Second year is a 4.8%. Third year is a 4.25%. You all set? Okay. Your turn.
Anyone else? Is there a motion on this?
Mr. Moderator, I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 14.
Okay, there's been a motion made to restrict reconsideration of Article 14. It's been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll go to the next article. But before we do, I want to correct an oversight. That is that I didn't introduce Town Clerk Kathy Ball when I was introducing everybody else up here. So now, Articles 15 through 19 and Petition Article 22 seek to fund projects from the town's unassigned fund balance. The town has asked for an opportunity to explain unassigned fund balance before discussing those articles, and for this purpose, I recognize Chairman Georgianis.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The fund balance in general is a balance sheet account that represents the difference between a municipality's assets and liabilities as of a certain point in time. Unassigned fund balance refers to the portion of the fund balance that has not been assigned and is available for use by the town. Unassigned fund balance is created when a municipality expends less what then was appropriated, and is also created when the town receives more revenues than anticipated. The town is authorized to carry unassigned fund balance because the town is responsible for collecting property taxes on behalf of the town, school, and the county. It also assists in cash flow as the town distributes and collects taxes to the school and county regardless of collection rates. The New Hampshire Department of Revenue Administration recommends a range of 8 to 17% of regular general fund operating expenditures. In New Hampshire, the general fund operating expenditures is calculated by adding the town's general fund, operating appropriations, the education tax amount, the local school, and the net tax commitment, and the county appropriation. As you can see, last fall at tax rate setting, the town had $7.6 million unassigned fund balance, or 14.7%. General fund operating expenditures, the $7.6 million is not cash in the bank. This figure includes uncollected taxes and other receivables due to the town. Unassigned fund balance can be accessed by the town for 3 purposes. The Select Board can use unassigned fund balance for tax rate setting to stabilize the town side of the tax rate. When the Select Board sets the tax rate in October this past fall, the board voted to use $1 million of fund balance to stabilize the town tax rate. Unassigned fund balance can be used when an emergency occurs during the year, which requires overspending of the adopted budget. When this is necessary, there is a legal process involving the Budget Committee and the Department of Revenue Administration. The town can also choose to fund purchases with the fund balance upon voter approval at the annual town meeting. This year, the board has put forward 5 articles seeking use of the fund balance to fund the Fire Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund and 4 one-time projects not likely to reoccur. Your turn.
Not really in the program, but if anyone has any questions or would like to have additional information on this subject, that is the unassigned fund balances, please feel free to ask. Yes. Barbara. Surprise here, right?
Good evening. Sorry, I didn't say the first time. Barbara Griffin, Merrill Road. I just did a...
Did you hold up your card?
Pardon me?
You're supposed to go like this with your card and...
Oh, I got it somewhere. I might have just added wrong. So what is the total, you just presented, when we go through these articles, what is the total that you're asking to come from the unassigned fund balance this year?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head. We all look at it one thing at a time.
Did you write it down?
So the select board is proposing 845,000, and then you have the petition for 200,
Right.
so 845 plus the 200.
The select board's 845,000. Then there's also a petition to warrant article for another 200,000.
All right, so the selectmen have 845,000 and there's a petition for 200, so that's $1 million. Before we get into the discussion of the individual items, thank you for the oversight, and you're saying that going into this cycle, we have 7.6 million in the retained fund balance. Right? With the maximum of 8.8, right? Those are our numbers. And so I think what I just heard is the 7.6 is after you used $1 million last year?
That was at tax setting time we had those funds.
Okay, so you used $1 million before or after we get to the 7.6?
Before.
So the 7.6 is after, and that's what I think I said, use of the $1 million you referred to.
And we're proposing
Right.
using 800 and this stuff.
I'm not saying it was inappropriate use, I'm saying it wasn't. So we were pretty much at the maximum amount of the retained fund balance going into the tax setting. Pretty much. If I add $1 million to 7.6, I get 8.6. You're telling me the maximum is 8.8.
But as we said, Barbara, that's not cash in the bank.
No, I have sat there for 12 years.
Yeah,
I understand that. But one of my issues...
Unassigned fund balance before.
And one of my issues has been the use of the retained fund balance to fund things that I think should be getting funded in the regular budget. So my question is, how much are we adding to the retained fund balance every year if we're being able to draw it down to the tune of $1 million a year, and I don't think that's far off from prior years, and still maintain a balance that's nearly at the maximum recommended by DRA? What's the average gain in our retained fund balance at the end of our budget year for, say, last year and the prior 3 years?
Well, you could send that number out there. You could make it be fictitious because we don't know what the school's going to return, right? We don't know what unanticipated revenues we got to get, so...
Right, but we should know what we did for the last 3 years.
I don't have to look it up. I don't know off the top of my head what that
All right.
was, but...
Thank you. As we view it, I need to say that I think the retained fund balance has been getting carried at an extremely high rate, and it raises real questions to me about the budget that's going on. It looks like your town administrator might have an answer.
It's approximately, for the last few years, about $1 million that goes in, and then about $1 million that's spent to add.
Yeah, million in, million out.
So our budget process is generating $1 million extra that's not being spent every year?
No, that's a combination
Of unexpected revenues and return from the school.
and conservative revenue estimates. So we've been overshooting our revenue estimates last few years.
Underestimated.
I think the point has been made. Thank you.
So is there some question that you had, Barbara, that we didn't answer? I want to make sure you understand the unreserved fund balance, that's all. Isn't it?
I understand the unreserved fund balance. My question was, how much are we putting in that we're able to maintain the maximum? And what I'm hearing is the net in and out is about $1 million a year. And we're maintaining approximately the same balance, which is at the high end. So
Yes, but it's not actually cash money in the bank, right? there's a float out there of about $1 million of uncollected taxes every year also. So,
I'm not sure everybody can hear you, Peter. You might want to get closer to the microphone.
Does anyone else wish to be heard on the, this issue of the unassigned fund balance? Yes.
Liz Dolan, 356 Worthley Hill Road. So after all of that, $1 million is out there in uncollected taxes. It comes in and it goes out. But then there's still a balance of $7 million. Is that in the bank?
no.
Or is that uncollected taxes too?
No, it's revenues that are due, some of it. And
Into the mic.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Derek. It's revenues that are due that we may have or we may not, but it's not cash in the bank. There's a certain amount of cash in the bank. You know, you have to have.
Seems like a lot of
revenue. We get a bill from the school. The town gets a bill from the school. It could be for $2 million in one shot. So we have to carry a balance in the bank to cover that kind of stuff, and that's what that's used for. And the same thing, we pay the county. So the school bills the town for their budget dollars because we collect the taxes. So that goes into that fund, and there's money in the bank. It goes back and forth. Somebody looks confused. Go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
Anyone else? All right, we'll go on to the next article, which is Article 15. All right, Article 15 is a deposit into the fire apparatus capital reserve fund from the unassigned fund balance, and Selectman Bowen has moved it to the floor and it's been seconded. Is that right? Okay. I'd like to address it.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening. The Fire Department Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund was established in 2008 for the purpose of helping defray the single-year impact of the replacement cost of modern fire apparatus, which can run between $750,000 and $1.5 million. This Capital Reserve Fund helps to spread that cost over multiple years to avoid spikes in the tax rate. This fund can also provide the town leverage in the form of a local match when seeking grants to replace apparatus. This was the case in 2010 when the fire department was able to accept an Assistance to Firefighters grant to replace the town's obsolete ladder trucks with one tower ladder. In that instance, the required match dollars came from this fund. The current balance as of December 31st, 2021 of the Fire Apparatus Capital Reserve Fund is $894,457. Over the years, this fund has also been used to replace a pumper tanker, command SUV, and a rescue boat. In this year's operating budget, the CIP budget includes the purchase of a fire pumper tanker with offsetting funds to come from this Capital Reserve Fund. This article is to be funded from the unassigned fund balance with no additional monies to be raised by taxation. This article is recommended by the Select Board and Budget Committee.
Okay. Open for discussion on this article. Anyone?
Mr. Moderator, I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 15. Second.
All right, there's a pending motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 15. It's been seconded. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion passes. We'll go to 16. Article 16 is an appropriation article to purchase and install a ventilation and fire suppression system for the Public Works garage facility from unassigned fund balance. I recognize Selectman Adams.
Mr. Moderator, I move Article 16 to the floor.
Article 16 has been moved to the floor. Selectman Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and good evening, folks. I appreciate your indulgence. I'm still recovering from foot surgery. It takes me a little time to waddle back and forth between the podium and my seat, so I appreciate your indulgence with that. I want to speak to Article 16. This article would appropriate $250,000 from the unassigned fund balance that we've just heard explained for the purchase and installation of a ventilation and suppression system for the Public Works garage facility. This garage facility is staffed by 14 full-time employees throughout the day. The garage also stores equipment and material worth millions of dollars. This project will protect our town employees and our investment in those vehicles and equipment. For example, this is important because, for example, recent fires at DPW garages have wiped out entire fleets in the town of Henniker and nearby Charlotte, Vermont. So this is an important issue. We could lose millions and millions of dollars in equipment and apparatus. The system is currently substandard. Inside the building, we use welding and torches to maintain the town's fleet of vehicles, so I think that you can see that there's a real risk of fire in the facility. Recent water main extension has been built to the DPW facility and now provides a ready source of water for the sprinkler systems. This article would be funded from the unassigned fund balance with no additional monies to be raised by taxation. This article has been recommended by both the Select Board and the Budget Committee.
Floor is open for discussion. Anyone wish to be heard? A motion?
Move to strict reconsideration of the article.
Is there a second? All right, there's a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 16. That motion has been seconded. Is it all in favor of the motion? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? We'll go to 17. Article 17 is an appropriation article to purchase and install an air curtain burner for brush burning at the Public Works transfer station from unassigned fund balances. I recognize Selectman Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move Article 17 to the floor.
You want to move it?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This article would appropriate $170,000 from the unassigned fund balance to purchase and install an air curtain burner for brush burning at the Public Works transfer station. Now, if you're like me, you're asking yourself, what in the world is an air curtain burner? I like to think of it as an oversized set of bellows that basically flames the burning of the brush pile so that it gets done quicker and more efficiently. Organic matter like brush and small logs are generated from DTW operations, and residents drop off year-round. If you've ever been down to the transfer station on a Saturday, you've seen the mountain of brush that's collected, both from town operations and from residents dropping off their brush. Two main options for disposal of this brush is to either grind it or burn it. Grinding contractor typically costs the town about $10,000 each time the brush is ground up, and this happens several times a year. Open burning is an option, but leads to abutter complaints. It's labor intensive, and it's hard to keep a clean, fast burn pile going. Air curtain burners use a power-assisted fan and special airflow design to provide a faster, hotter burn with very little emissions and smoke generated. It also creates a market for byproducts of biochar as a soil amendment for use both in town projects, for instance, when we're top seeding and topsoiling areas where we've done road shoulders, ditches, detention basins, stormwater management facilities, and things of that sort. This article is to be funded from the unassigned fund balance with no additional monies to be raised by taxation. This article is recommended by the Select Board and the Budget Committee.
All right, Article 17 is open for discussion. Yes, sir.
Daniel Taylor, First Avenue. How many times per year do we employ a grinding contractor in, say, the past 3 years?
Thank you for the question. Obviously, it depends on how much brush comes down, but it averages anywhere between 3 and sometimes as many as 6 times a year at $10,000 per.
Okay, and what do we do with the wood chips?
I'm sorry?
What do we use the wood chips for?
Well, the wood chip, there's no wood chips, it's ash and char residue.
No, I mean from the grinding operation.
What do we do with the chip from the grinding operations currently?
Yes.
We use them around, they're good erosion control material. You can put them on exposed soils to help prevent erosion of those soils. I'm sorry. And those sorts of things.
And what would we replace that with if we're burning them instead?
Well, we continue to use topsoil. There'll still probably be some wood chips that are generated here and there, but primarily the byproducts would be used to stabilize soils. It's a great soil amendment to help promote and stimulate vegetative growth, like I say, on our side slopes, on roadways, in our ditch lines along roadways, in areas like stormwater management basins and those sorts of things. So it gives it a good start, quick start on vegetative growth to get those areas stabilized.
So would we, since we would no longer have as much wood chips, do we currently have excess wood chips?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Getting some props here.
Okay. So we likely would not have to purchase wood chips because we have an excess currently.
Yeah, we make our own basically,
Right.
so we don't have to purchase them. It's right there. It's ready for our use.
Okay. Thank you.
I'm sorry, Barbie. Couldn't hear?
Can't hear you. Get closer to the mic.
Okay.
Excuse me, Barbara Griffin. People who are listening online are having a really hard time following the conversation, particularly probably from that mic, so people really need to try to get closer to the mic.
Okay, thank you for the heads up, Barbara. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Brian Lombardi, 49 Tyler.
Thank you.
If we have several grindings per year, you mentioned 3 to 6, are we expecting, if this passes, that there's $30,000 to, say, $60,000 returned to the operating budget from if we purchase this? If this article passes, should we expect the Public Works operating budget to be decreased? And does that, if it does, if we are expecting that, does that need to be incorporated into the article?
Well, obviously, the first thing we have to do is pay off the piece of equipment, and that'll take 3 or 4 years to do that.
Well, that would be done from the unassigned fund. That's the question is to pay for it through the unassigned fund.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time hearing you, but I think I hear you saying it's going to be done from the unassigned fund balance. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's what the article is.
Yep. Yeah, you're correct. That's what it is.
So, do we then expect
You want to field it?
$10,000 per grinding, which we're saying you said just 3 to 6 times a year? Would we expect that back into the operating budget? And if we are, shouldn't that be included as part of the article, saying that if the article passes, that the operating budget would be decreased by approximately, say, $50,000 or something like that?
That's a great question. Looking over at Adam Jacobs, our DPW director. We would not expect to have this up and operational in 2022. It would be the purchase and installation during 2022, but we could expect to reduce future budgets by that grinding amount between, I guess, whether we're doing 3 or 4, so we're between $30,000 and $40,000 reduction in future budgets starting in 2023.
Anyone else?
reconsideration of Article 17, Mr. Moderator.
Is it seconded? Okay, motion made to restrict reconsideration of Article 17 has been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Motion passed. Go to Article 18. It's an appropriation article to replace the truck scale at the Public Works Transfer Station from the unassigned fund balance. Selectman Adams.
Mr. Moderator, I move Article 18 to the floor.
Okay?
This article would appropriate $75,000 from the unassigned fund balance to replace the truck scale at the Public Works Transfer Station. This pit scale is used to weigh incoming demolition and commercial trash for disposal, as well as to weigh DPW trucks for outgoing trash, road salt, and tracking up to 100,000 pounds of road salt a year. The scale is original to the facility, and the steel frame has required repair several times in the past. It's just simply rusting and rotting out and becoming obsolete. Recent inspection of the scale has shown that emergent repairs are needed, and cribbing was recommended as a temporary safety measure, as well as not using the scale for the heavier DPW truck weights. The most cost-effective option is to replace the scale pit, internals, and damaged concrete around the pit. Switching to an above-ground scale is another option under consideration, but is not nearly as cost-effective and is not as good as replacing this one with an upgraded pit scale. This article is to be funded from the unassigned fund balance with no additional revenues and monies to be raised by taxation. This article is recommended by the Select Board and the Budget Committee.
Thank you. Floor is open for discussion. Yes.
Thank you, sir. Lauren Dukas, 23 Ginger Drive. During our budget committee presentations, which were very effectively given to us by shared with us by the Select Board and by DPW, this was still under consideration for the pit scale or the elevated scale that was mentioned. You just had said that the elevated scale is going to be less cost effective. Does that mean that this article has already been determined to be a pit scale, or are we raising and appropriating the funds before we know what it's going to be exactly used for? Or maybe that's...
Well, thank you for the question, and I don't pretend to be an expert on scales right up front. So I'm going to look to our DPW director, perhaps with some support from Derek, to give you some specifics on that, if I may.
Thank you. I was just curious, because for the $75,000 that's coming out of the unassigned fund balance, if we were sure that that was going to be the ticket number, or if it was going to go up to the elevated yet.
So DPW, as I understand it, is still evaluating the options between the two different options, but the $75,000 would allow them the flexibility to do whatever's best for the transfer station.
So that, if I may follow up, if that figure is not going to go up?
Correct. It would not. And if it did go over that, then they would need to, the select board would need to do a budget transfer out of the operating budget to support any additional funds out of the operating budget.
Thank you, Mr. Horn. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion, questions? You have a motion? Is there a second? Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded to restrict reconsideration of Article 18. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, we'll go to 19. Article 19 is an appropriation article for the purpose of conducting a 10-year update to the town's GIS mapping data from unassigned fund balance. I recognize Selectman Craig. Is there a second? Second. Seconded. You wish to address it?
Good evening. I hope this is straightforward. This article would appropriate $100,000 from unassigned fund balance to conduct an update of the town's GIS mapping system. This project would update the aerial photography, this project would update the aerial photography and town GIS that is used by all departments. It is also available to the public through the town's website. During the previous 10-year update in 2012, there were external buildings changes to over 500 parcels, numerous new roads and subdivisions. There had been road reclamations, easement work, sewer and water projects that had rendered much of the original mapping inaccurate. This article is to be funded from the unassigned fund balance with no additional monies to be raised by taxation. This article is recommended by the Select Board and Budget Committee.
Floor is open for discussion. Questions? Motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move to restrict...
Hold it. Just a minute. We have somebody who wants to be heard. Yes, sir. Sorry, I didn't turn my head far enough.
David Neiman, N-I-E-M-A-N. I have a question about the part where it says it's available to the public through the town's website. Now, will that mean something more than merely being able to look at the maps on the town's website? Could we provide a provision where one could download the image to be able to use it with other mapping products to create other maps? There's a lot of reasons for doing it, which I won't go into, but that would be enormously helpful to be able to actually extract it in a usable form, not just a screenshot or looking at a picture that you really can't do anything else with. Can we make that happen? If we're spending this much money, we ought to be able to.
So this appropriation is for the most part to fund the flyover that would create the data.
Right.
You are correct. We do not currently have the shape files or some of the files available through the website, but I think that's something that we could explore. We are working with CDM Smith to renew our product and to get to a more current version of their ArcGIS product, but it was something that we can look at, but that is not included in this appropriation. This is to fly the town, the pictures, and create the data.
Okay, well, thank you for the answer. I would certainly encourage and hope that they would be explored to be able to put it in other more usable forms, because we're now living in 2022. Things have changed a lot since 2012. Thank you.
Are there any additional questions or discussion? Yes.
Evelyn Redmond, Patty Hill Road. I don't have an issue with this particular amendment, but I would like to make a request that the Select Board discontinue the practice of utilizing the unassigned fund balance for purchase of items that should go into this capital improvement plan, and to strive to improve the estimation of your revenues to avoid the over-collection of taxes. Thank you.
So, there's no question there, okay.
Forget amendment. Is there anyone else that wishes to be heard? All right, is there a motion?
I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 19.
All right, there's a pending motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 19, which has been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. We'll go to Article 20. Article 20 is to fund a portion of Crispin House's annual operating budget. I recognize Vice Chairman Bowen.
Mr. Moderator, I move Article 20 to the floor.
Is there a second? Okay, it's on the floor. You wish to discuss?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening again. This article would continue taxpayer support of Crispin's House Coalition for Youth. Crispin's House has provided services to youth and families of Goffstown for over 30 years, providing a wide range of program opportunities to help kids make positive choices. The annual budget of Crispin's House is about $105,000. The warrant article funds $20,000, or around 19% of the total budget. The organization works hard to raise the remaining funds through fundraising activities, community involvement, and grants. This article demonstrates strong and continued community support, which helps these efforts. Programs include an accredited juvenile court diversion program, volunteens, youth forums, challenge day, mental health education, suicide prevention, and substance misuse prevention. This article is recommended by the Select Board and Budget Committee.
Does anyone wish to be heard on this article? All right, is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 20.
Okay, there's a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 20, which has been seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. We'll go to 21. If I can get the page. Okay. Article 21 is to fund a portion of the Goffstown Main Street Program annual operating budget. I recognize Selectman Craig. Okay, do you wish to address this?
This article would continue taxpayer support of Goffstown Main Street program. Goffstown Main Street program's mission is to provide support, advice, and promotion to current and potential business owners in the designated Main Street area and cultivate a sense of community for Goffstown residents using the National Main Street Center's four-point approach. The four-point approach revolves around principles of effective design, promotion, economic restructuring, and organization as the keys to economic revitalization of the historic downtown. Passage of this warrant article would provide $15,000 toward their 2022 budget. This article was put forward by the Select Board at the request of Main Street. This article is not recommended by the Select Board and Budget Committee.
Is there any discussion? Questions on this article? Yes.
Valerie Neal, 12 Tamar Drive. What is the operating budget for the Main Street program?
I couldn't hear what you thinking about.
The operating budget? That was not provided. A final adopted budget was not provided to us.
That's part of the problem. That was not provided to us.
So even online, when you look, there is no operating budget, nor have they filed their taxes for the last 2 years. So why is this even going on a warrant article? They've been around 20 years. They haven't brought anything to this town.
Well, that's why we voted not to.
But why waste the paper?
I'm sorry?
Why waste the paper? They haven't brought what they say they're doing. You have no operating budget, but you're asking taxpayers to give $15,000.
Well, they're entitled to put the warrant in, so that's...
So there's no transparency. We don't know their operating budget.
No.
But they're still able to ask for $15,000 every year?
Well, that's why we didn't recommend the warrant, so.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
My name is Marissa Berg, and I am at 29 Church Street in Goffstown. This is the first deliberative session meeting that I've been to. I don't really know a whole lot about politics, but I just wanted to come and express my support for the Main Street program. I'm a 30-year resident of Goffstown, and it's really important to me that we do continue supporting this program. So much so that I recently just joined the board, been to just one meeting, so I can't really answer specific questions, but I think that there's a lot of passion behind supporting the activities of the Main Street program, the Pumpkin Regatta, the Uncommon Art Festival, Halloween, all kinds of things. And I just wanted to express my support.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Mr. Platt.
I'm Fred Platt. I'm Vice Chair of the Budget Committee, and I was the heavy who made the motion not to recommend for the Budget Committee. And the reason was, when the budget was presented for Main Street, it didn't make any sense. It was thrown together. It was done by volunteers, and the homework wasn't there. And I also saw that they had $200,000 in reserves, so they could get by with $15,000 without $15,000 for 1 year. Their long-term goal was to get off, not need the $15,000 every year, but it's continued. And so it's not earth-shaking not to have the $15,000 there.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Lauren Dukas, Ginger Drive. I'd like to say that I was one of the dissenting opinions on the Budget Committee. I agree. When we initially got Goffstown Main Street's budget, it was not clear. There were a lot of questions to it. There were a lot of, I think that's the figure. They had acknowledged at the time that they were not running an efficient operation. They got rid of their, I believe it was a department, not a department head. I forget the term that Ellen used, but they had moved to an all-volunteer board. So we did get an updated budget after the initial presentation. Again, I was equally disheartened that at a budget presentation we didn't have the budget. But as a resident of Goffstown and someone who has moved here newly, these are the things in my town that I want to spend our taxes on. So it might not be earth-shattering to them that they don't get the $15,000, but their rent was, I think, $10,000 a year. So pretty much that covers them renting a building on our Main Street. It might be well, not earth-shattering, but it'll be community-shattering if we don't have a regatta, if we don't have Art on the Common, if the kids don't get to do trick-or-treating. Because even just in candy, that was, I want to say $200-300 just in candy that was outlaid. So I understand and I share the concerns, but it is where I would like, as a resident, to see our community spend its money. So I wanted to explain my dissenting opinion. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yes. Yes.
Thank you, Moderator. Laura Stevens, 33 Orchard Hill Road. I am not in favor of this amendment. I haven't been in the past. The Main Street program does not use funds for Halloween. Those are the businesses downtown and the residents downtown. The mission is stated as community organization, business promotion, design, and economic development. I haven't seen any of those close to being met. I'm not sure what they're doing and using the funds for. I agree that this is a great use of funds if they were being used to support these things in the community. I don't think Regatta would stop without them. Halloween would definitely continue without Main Street. And I think it speaks volumes that no one is here to speak from that group.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, are there anybody else wants to address this article? All right, is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move to restrict reconsideration of Article 21.
Seconded? All right, there's a motion made and seconded to restrict reconsideration of Article 21. All in favor say aye. Opposed? That motion passes. We'll go to 22.
Moderator, I move Article 22 to the floor.
All right, this article is submitted by petition. I recognize Chairman Georgianis.
Mr. Moderator, I'll step aside to allow any of the petitioners to explain the background and the purpose behind this article.
Is there somebody in the audience from the petitioners that wishes to address this article?
Out there, Victor.
Yes.
I'm Mr. Martell from East Goffstown, and I'm the one who did this petition article because I found out that that station in Irene Town has been closed for the last 2 years, and I feel we need a station down there in the town, so I found out there was a lot of safety issues with it. So I had put this number, 200,000, because engineers aren't cheap, and I didn't know how much it would be entailed. But then I called different engineers, couldn't get no responses. I finally spoke to McFarland and Johnson. They're doing the work for the library, and Fred Mulch, he talked to me this morning, and I said I was going to probably put an amendment to the to this to change the figures from 200,000 to 50,000. He says that would be more than ample enough. It probably wouldn't even cost that. Spoke to the new fire chief tonight. He said 20,000 would probably be able to do the study to see what's going to take to open this station back up, because there's safety problems. We need a station down there in the town. We are far away from the central station, and by the time they get to our end of town, most of the time the houses are gone. Yeah. So if I can at this time, I'd like to make a motion to put an amendment on the monetary amount. Can I do that?
If you wish to submit a motion to amend...
Pardon me? I can't hear you with that thing on.
If you wish to submit a motion to amend this article...
Amend.
You may do so, but it has to be in writing.
That comes from where? The audience, or can I do it?
No, put it in, you can do it.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the monetary to $20,000 like the fire chief told me it would cost.
Put that motion in writing, sir. There are forms available for that purpose. Huh?
Can you recognize us?
Yes.
You want me to wait till he comes up with his motion, or should I just go ahead?
You may as well wait for them.
Okay, whatever you want to do. He just said he wanted me to wait.
Okay.
I have received a motion to amend from Mr. Martell, and it reads to change the $200,000 to $20.
$20,000.
Hold it. This is written, oh, did I say $20? I meant $20,000. Yes. Sorry. And
$20, I'll give it to you right now.
in order to bring this motion to the floor, it needs to be seconded. Is it seconded? All right. You may address your motion.
Pardon me?
You may address the motion.
All right, so you want me to read this out now?
Do you wish to discuss your motion?
I don't understand what you're saying. This is the first time I hear this.
Do you want to discuss your motion to amend?
No.
You've already done that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. Is there any further discussion on the motion to amend?
You need a second.
It's been seconded.
We need to have your name and address.
Richard Freeman, 111 Terrell Hill Road.
Go ahead. All right. Little history on this. In 2012, the Select Board formed an ad hoc committee and made a staff of elected officials, town residents, to study and develop and deliver a fire station improvement plan for all 3 fire stations within the town. In 2012, the ad hoc committee found that Station 17, which is the station in question up on Terrell Hill Road, had significant problems with the structure, mechanical components, and functionality. The committee recommended a building reconfiguration and an addition estimated at $1 million in 2012. It is now approximately $2 million for that restoration. The committee figured that $2 million in the future years, in addition to any facility upgrades, the station would need to be staffed with additional personnel, totaling, with the 24/7 model, you have 4 shifts, 3 firefighters, totaling 12 additional firefighters, and the approximate of about 12 firefighters, which is about $950,000 per year. So after you spend the $2 million to build it, then you're talking another $950,000 just to staff it. Also not included so far is the equipment that would need to be purchased if you were going to put an ambulance in there, which is one of the things that Vic had talked about, and having new fire equipment. The problem with that fire station is the current equipment won't fit in. It's too small, not high enough. So knowing all this and not having this in the immediate plans, the article is not recommended by the Select Board or the Budget Committee.
All right, now we're dealing with the amendment. And is there any further discussion on the amendment?
Liz Dolan, 356 Worthley Hill. I remember something from the past when there was a petition, and it passed, but it didn't matter because nobody here was going to do anything with it. And I wonder about this. If it does pass, what will happen with that $20,000?
It wouldn't be expended. Yeah, if it passes, okay, that would give a message to the board that enough residents thought it was important enough to pursue it. But that still doesn't mean that the board would do that. It'd be because you're talking about spending money that it's just going to tell you what you already know, and you're looking at something that's would be way in the future, because as of right now, that's not in the near future to redo that station or fill it, or, you know, put it with necessary personnel. It's just not in the cards. The expense isn't there yet. It's just too expensive right now. There's other projects that are on the board first.
Stacy Belmore, 8 Goffstown Back Road. I'm sorry, Peter, you're misrepresenting actually what was presented to the Budget Committee. That wasn't presented to us. What was presented was the proposal from Mr. Martell about a study, and we had requested that we get this information from the fire chief, which no one had for us. So we turned this down just as the request for the $200,000. I thank you for that data, but we did not have that information there, so we did not make the decision based on that. I think that's important for our next vote, but that was not part of the presentation.
The Budget Committee is scheduled to meet after this meeting. So that's something else you can talk, take up at that meeting. So, and you can change your recommendation.
Anything further on the amendment? Let me remind you what yes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think that the amendment of $20,000 coming out of the fund balance, out of all the articles that are up there that have money coming out of the fund balance, is a very, very small amount in comparison. And I'm very familiar with the study that Chairman Georgantis brought up back in 2012. There's also been other studies that have been done. There was also one done by UNH that was done for the town. One of the things is that that's an outlying station. The town is divided by a river, and over the years, it's always been a concern of previous boards of selectmen. When a bridge is out, as though the bridge in the middle of town was out, fire trucks had issues because they had to go across the Main Street Bridge, and at the time, that Main Street Bridge was kind of falling into disrepair. And it was a big concern of the Board of Selectmen at the time that if something would have happened to that bridge, we'd have to go to either Ware or Manchester to get to the other side of town with the fire department, especially with St. A's being in Goffstown. We need to be able to get to them, but we would have the Penardville station, but we'd be kind of stuck. One of the other issues is when you buy a house on that side of town, the first question from the insurance company is, how far are you from the fire station? And that there allows the insurance rates for the residents in that portion of town to at least be reasonable. Without a fire station in there, it would be a higher rate. And I think that if $20,000 is an acceptable amount to come up with some sort of solution, it doesn't have to be a $2 million solution. It could be a smaller solution that at least it's partially, there's some equipment in there in case something happens to that way, because out that part of town we have cisterns that have to be used, and the pumpers and the hose reels that have to go out to the towns from the cisterns. So if we have some equipment in there, at least it's a benefit for the fire department and for the residents of town. So I would support that amendment, and I would hope that everybody else would look at it. It's a nominal amount of money in comparison to all the other money coming out of general fund. So I would appreciate the support.
Anyone else? Is there a second on the previous question?
Second.
All in favor of ending debate, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to vote on the amendment. If the amendment passes, the article will appear in the amended fashion on the warrant. We're not going to be voting on the warrant tonight. We never do. If the amendment fails, we'll go back to discussion on the main article. Does everybody understand that? What I just said? Okay, so the amendment is to change the 200,000 in Article 22 to 20,000. All in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the amendment passes. And that's what will appear on the warrant on Article 22. Is there a motion to restrict reconsideration? Has that been seconded? All in favor of restricting reconsideration of this, what we just voted on, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so that's done. Here. Kathy, here. We'll go to Article 23. Article 23 was also submitted by petition. Is Selectman LeMay available?
Yes, I move Article 23 to the floor, Mr. Moderator. Second.
Is there a second?
Thank you, sir. Like the last article, I will step aside to allow any petitioners here this evening to explain the background and the purpose of this article. So at this time, if there is anybody, please feel free to come up.
Barbara Griffin, Merrill Road. I am not a petitioner, but I've been asked to speak on this, so I'm going to. This warrant article is actually one of about 30 that are appearing on warrants across the state. They are asking the communities in which they appear on the warrant to go forward in elections, hand counting all ballots and not using the machines that we currently use, the AccuView machines that we put our ballots in that are essentially tabulators. And so that is the intent of this petition. The people who have submitted this petition have concerns about the AccuView machines based on concerns about election security. Some of you may have heard of issues in Windham, New Hampshire that happened in regards to the voting. And so that is the petitioned article. It's to ask if the community would rather hand count rather than continue to use the tabulators.
All right. Before we get too much further along that line, I need to explain that I have received an amendment. Actually, I've received 2 amendments to this article. Who's the other one? The first amendment that I received was submitted by William Roberts, who's sitting right over there. And the article, as amended, reads as follows. This was handed to me. And this is what would replace what's in the warrant now. Quote, shall the following advisory view pertaining to elections be adopted? Question mark. Voting by ballot should be conducted in the same manner as in recent elections, with no new limitations on the use of optical scanning or other electronic counting devices. End quote. That's the amendment. So that's on the floor for discussion. You wish to discuss it?
Second?
Has it been seconded?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Yes.
I'm Bill Roberts, R-O-B-E-R-T-S, 23 Roberts Road. And you've stated the amendment. Should I go through it again for people?
Your amendment?
Yes.
You want to read it again? Go ahead.
Just in case you didn't get it, it would read, shall the following advisory view pertaining to elections be adopted? Voting by ballot should be conducted in the same manner as in recent elections with no new limitations on the use of optical scanning or other electronic counting devices. As currently worded, as Barbara Griffin said, Article 23 would require that all ballots be hand counted without the use of optical scanners or electronic counting devices. In addition to appearing on the ballot in various towns, there, as you may know, similar proposals are being debated in the state legislature. I agree with those who feel that there's no factual basis for concern that the election results are being affected by machine counting. Similar proposals at the state level are being opposed by the New Hampshire Municipal Association, the New Hampshire Town and City Clerks Association, and groups that encourage voting, such as the League of Women Voters of New Hampshire. The town clerk in Milford has said that 2/3 of New Hampshire communities use automated machines because they are reliable, a view that our recently retired Secretary of State, Bill Gardner, agreed with. May not have agreed with her, but he agreed with that assessment. Passage of Article 23 in its current form could create significant problems for future vote counting in Goffstown. And I believe in my view, I feel the Select Board has wisely voted not to recommend Article 23 in its current form. The proposed amendment would do two things. First, it would have the article state an advisory view rather than a requirement. Second, the amendment would suggest a preference for making no change in how ballots are currently processed and counted. If the meeting were to adopt this proposed amendment to Article 23, it's my hope that the Select Board would then change its recommendation on the article from not recommended to recommended.
Does anyone wish to speak against the amendment?
My name is Barbara Schultz, and I live at 11 Honeysuckle Lane in Goffstown, New Hampshire. I think the intent of this, the petition, as well as the amendment, is for accuracy and integrity in our elections. We already have that here in Goffstown. We have a top-notch town clerk, top-notch election staff and election officials. We have clean, well-run elections that are very efficient. We have not had any problems. More people handling the ballots, as this talks about with hand counting, would just increase the chance for error. As the former gentleman said, he referred to our former Secretary of State, but even the current Secretary of State, David Scanlon, said in more than 30 years of using voting machines in the state, no major issues with reliability have occurred. The machines are tested and audited prior to use. There are no problems. I would also like to state that I have researched this a little bit, and in an article from the Portsmouth Herald regarding this same exact petition that's happening in the town of Hampton, said that the petition is stemming from a political group with a Remove the Machines campaign. And I went to that website. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to go to that website, but on the home page there is a picture of Joseph Stalin. And it has a quote from Joseph Stalin that says, quote, "It doesn't matter how many people vote, it only matters who counts the votes, quote. And to me, that's pretty sinister. They might look at it as saying, well, yeah, that's why we want paper counting. I think that's pretty sinister, and it speaks clearly to bad intent. So I support this amendment and this change. We don't have any problems. There's nothing to fix. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes.
Laura Stevens, 33 Orchard Hill Road. I support the amendment as well. The over 30 petitions that have gone around in the state of New Hampshire, in the least, it's a baseless questioning of results because of the 2020 election. At worst, it puts us in a place where we're giving people cause to doubt a system when there is no cause. There is no problem to fix. There's a professor at the University of Iowa, Professor Douglas Jones. He is a voting machine expert, and he stated that in rare instances in which the machines would cause major issues, they'd be caught right away. The machines don't make errors unless there's an error in configuration, which would be a human error, yes. I'm sure the moderator or someone on the board can speak more to how these machines are configured and sealed prior to the election, if people want that info. I won't get into it because I'm not the expert, but it's far more likely that with all the time, manpower, the hours that counting ballots, especially in a federal election, would continue, the likelihood of human error is far greater than it is with these machines. Yes, they've been around for a long time, but that doesn't mean that they are faulty at all. The situation in Wyndham is not telling of bigger or larger situations that are occurring. There's no pattern happening. This is trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist in order to, that's all I'm going to say. This is trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist. I support the amendment.
Thank you. Is there somebody else? Anyone else?
Hi, Joe Alexander, 3 Oakwood Lane. I would just say this is something that the state legislature should be dealing with. In 2018, I won my race by 5 votes on election day, and after the recount turned into 9 votes. That was over 7,000 votes cast, and a lot of those votes that changed were due to voter error and not machine count error. So I have utmost respect, and Kathy Ball, Karen Ladd, the entire team, to get our elections right in Goffstown. This amendment, I think, does more to confuse the voters than help the voters, and I would just say that maybe we should vote no on this to let the voters defend Kathy and the team and make sure that we're all, kind of know exactly what we're voting for. I believe this amendment kind of muddies up the language a lot, so I'll be voting no on this. Thank you.
Someone else? Barbara?
Barbara Griffin, I'm going to be voting against this amendment. And it's my understanding procedurally that there are 2 amendments on this, so this amendment will be voted on, pass or fail, and regardless of whether it passes or fail, there's another amendment to be considered. Is that correct? Because I'm going to make my remarks accordingly. So is that that's my understanding of what the process would be, unless the person who has made the other motion withdraws it. Okay. Barbara, you had it, that was the second one? Okay. All right.
So the second motion which I have would be withdrawn, is that correct?
If this passes.
If this passes. Okay. So does that clarify it for you?
Thank you. It does clarify it for me. I agree with Joe Alexander that I think that the amendment clouds the waters. I am concerned that even though it's an advisory, warrant article, and there is much discussion everywhere about what an advisory warrant would actually mean. It also references with no limitation on the use of scanners or, I think, other electronic devices. That's actually contrary to state law. The state law is a community can only use devices, tabulators, ballot counting devices that have been approved by the Ballot Law Commission. So to say that, to render an advisory warrant article that would say without limitation you can use these kind of devices would not be a clear direction of any type to anyone. So I am not supportive of the amendment because I think it is contrary to state law regardless of whether it's advisory or not. I'm also speaking against the amendment because my preference would be that this warrant article, this petitioned warrant article, go on the warrant as stated. And I say that both as a resident of Goffstown and as your elected representative of chair of the House Election Law Committee. As I said earlier, we are one community of at least 30 that has this warrant article on it. And what I'm looking for in the State House and my committee members are, of both sides of the aisle, are some clear responses. And we've already had a community in Greenland, I think it was Greenland, Lisa, do you know? It was Greenland, that had this, and they had their deliberative session and voted already, and they voted against this. And there was some attempts to amend it, and the proponents of this said the voters in Greenland did not understand what they were voting for. And I think it would be more useful to have a warrant article that's pretty clear. I mean, the people who drafted this were clear. Paper ballots, which is actually the law now, and all ballots shall be hand counted only. There's not a lot of confusion as to what that is asking, rather than by use of scanning or any type of electronic counting devices, because that's what we're talking about is tabulators. So when this goes to the voter, it will be a very clear question for the voter as to what is being asked by the petitioners, and it is very clear as to what the recommendation of their select board is. And if you start amending this, it does start to get confusing. And you also create a situation, and those of us who have been around since town meeting became an SB2 process, we know that every time you change a petitioned warrant article, you generate a lot of discussion about intent and whether moderators made the right decision, and how does a group of, 60 people change something that was intended to go in front of the voters of the community. And I'm not saying you don't have the right, clearly you do. But I would prefer that this group does not vote in favor of the amendment because, one, while it's advisory, I think it has direction that is contrary to state law, and two, by changing the petition warrant article, you are creating some confusion, and a vote on this, yes or no, will be very clear direction not only to the Board of Selectmen, but to the House Election Law Committee when they get the results from this community and the 29 other towns that are dealing with this. I will tell you the same discussion occurred in Salem this past weekend, and they have decided to go forward with it on the warrant article. I know another community changed the warrant article, and now the communities, they're in discussions about whether the change was even warranted legally. So when we change these petitioned warrant articles, a lot of things can happen. When we change numbers, like in the last time we just did, which was an appropriation number, it's pretty easy to understand and why you made the change. It becomes a little more convoluted with this. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Yes. Just 1 second, Bill. Go ahead.
My name is Lisa Mazer, 39 Shirley Park Road, and I concur with Barbara. Whether I agree with the warrant article or not, that amendment completely changes the intent of the warrant article. And I agree with the cloudiness of it, and it will confuse voters. We represent a few dozen people in this room, but in a circumstance like this, it has to be the voters of Goffstown that make this decision. It should go to the ballot the way it is, and the amendment completely takes away from the intent of the original. So I will be voting against that. Again, whether I agree with it or not, I just think the amendment just, I heard it, and the voters will be confused. I also heard, whoopsie, of another town that just had their deliberative session this past weekend, and they completely changed and took out the wording, and there are now talks of legal proceedings against them because of that. So you could, who knows, be entering some waters that just leave it to the voter. That's it. Just let our town make the decision. If they agree that our elections are, fantastic, then that's the way it's going to go, and it should be up to them. So that's my vote.
Okay. Yeah.
Mr. Moderator, thank you. I just want to say that I'm, in response to Barbara Griffin's comments, I'm not concerned about there being confusion with this. The ballot will show the final warrant article. It doesn't show the existing language or that it was amended. If the select board feels that it's a good amendment or it's good as amended, presumably they would change their recommendation. The chance of confusion, I don't think, is really there. It is totally advisory. The purpose of doing that is partially that I don't think this is the way we should make rules. And the idea of an advisory view would be essentially, what is the sense of the voters of the town when they vote on it? It would be good to know if they vote against having the election procedures remain as they are, then, well, we've got a chance to engage the voters on that. As far as the issue of whether this is contrary to state law, Barbara, I think you said that it said that there would be no limitation on the use of machines. It doesn't say that. It says no new limitation. And it's a sense of the town meeting on an official ballot. So it's really not something that suggests that anything be done contrary to state law. Obviously, nor could anything be done contrary to state law if it's binding as much in Goffstown as it is in Concord. Looking ahead, if it's a sense of this meeting that this language is not acceptable, I have a different amendment to offer that would make it more advisory but not change it. On the comments about it changing the intent, the New Hampshire Supreme Court said about 5 years ago in a case dealing with Deerfield, Katy versus the town of Deerfield, that it was perfectly okay and wouldn't lead to confusion, was the underlying tone of it, to have a change in an article that totally flipped what the article was going at. In that case, it was a article that said the police chief was one of the two articles, but one article said the police chief shall be elected. And that was the relevant part of it. The deliberative session changed the article to read as a question, shall we express an advisory view that the police chief should be appointed as is now the case? And the Supreme Court unanimously said, in response to a lawsuit by the petitioner, that's absolutely okay. You cannot, under state law, eliminate the subject matter of a warrant article at the deliberative session, but you can change the intent even if it's 180 degrees. Thank you.
Barbara Schultz, 11 Honeysuckle Lane. I want to address something that hasn't been discussed yet in this, and that's cost. If we go to hand counting, we are going to increase staffing, staffing is the wrong word, but we're going to increase the amount of people necessary. We're going to increase the time of getting results. It just could be extremely costly, and I don't want my taxes to go up because I have, 40 people, or however it may take, to sit there and hand count ballots. And I also, as I already stated, think that there's a greater chance for error. We do have a provision in the state that says that, if you have a recount, then the recount is hand counted. So hopefully that will please some of the people that feel like, oh, if the machines aren't accurate. Well, we've already got something in place to address that. We have a hand count recount if there's ever a question. The other thing I want to bring up, and I'm not a lawyer, but I did, as I said before, do some reading on this, and the counsel that is from the Secretary of State's office, his name is Fitch, his last name is Fitch, there was some discussion as to whether the Select Board could actually decide to do away with the machine. So I don't know if there's any kind of legal case there either, but we don't want to be spending our tax dollars getting involved in fighting all this, spending money on elections that we don't have to. Thank you.
Is that a motion?
I call the question, yes. Second.
Is it seconded?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion pending to move the previous question, which is to end debate on the pending amendment. All in favor of ending debate on this amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, so we'll have no further discussion on the amendment. Now we'll vote on the amendment. And the amendment is as follows. Quote, shall the following advisory view pertaining to elections be adopted? Question mark. Voting by ballot should be conducted in the same manner as in recent elections, with no new limitations on the use of optical scanning or other electronic counting devices. End quote. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. I say the amendment passes. Anybody want a standing vote?
No, let's do a secret ballot.
I don't know what somebody asked for. No.
Move for reconsideration.
Second.
Moving for reconsideration?
I'm sorry.
Or restricting?
No. Moving for reconsideration by ballot instead of by voice.
You're making a motion for reconsideration of this article, this amendment.
Of that vote.
All right. Is there a second on that motion?
Second. Ask a question. Does the person making the motion for reconsideration, how did that person vote on the?
All right. Okay. Let's have this vote by a standing vote. And when you stand, hold up your voter card, okay? Now we have our counters. Are they all lined up?
Moderator, there's a rule. We had a valid question brought to the floor, which was that a motion to reconsider may be made only by a person who voted with the prevailing side. So whoever made that motion to reconsider, did they vote on the prevailing side or not? It's on the motion for reconsideration. A motion to reconsider can only be made by a person who voted with the prevailing side.
Jared Talbot, 17 Pinecrest Drive. I made that motion, and unfortunately, we don't have any documentation of the way I voted, so I'm going to say, yes, I voted on the prevailing side.
That's what starts all this crap. Okay, hold it. I'm going to accept the motion for reconsideration.
Why? He clearly just lied. That's right. He lied. He just lied.
And he's a town elected official and he lied.
And you gave us rules. You gave us rules.
That's liable.
It is. You lied.
It's the rules you gave us, sir.
Will 7 people come forward and request a standing vote?
So once a voice vote has been taken, which we already have. Oh, sorry, Daniel Taylor, 1st Avenue, 21st Avenue. Once a voice vote has been taken, which we already have, a written request for a secret ballot may be made. It must be made by 7 registered voters who are present. I would like to be one of those people. I'd like to be one of those people, one of those 7.
The 7?
Yes.
Okay.
So we've already made a voice vote. Sorry. We've already made a voice vote. After a voice vote has been taken, a written request for a secret written ballot may be made. The request must be made by 7 people.
That's not what just happened.
It is what we just made.
We're not looking for a secret written ballot.
7 people, but there's going to be 7 of them.
Asking.
Because there is a lack of written evidence. Right. And the current motion on the floor is a motion for reconsideration, not for a written secret ballot. That's not correct. So we have the motion open to reconsider. How are we proceeding forward? We can't.
All right, let me get back to where I was, okay?
Yep.
I've accepted the motion for reconsideration, okay? And now I'm calling for a standing vote. All right? So, the way we're going to do it is if you are in favor of the motion for reconsideration, well, I've already accepted it. If you're in favor of the motion to amend, okay, stand up and hold your card up.
Mr. Talbot, I thought you voted for the prevailing side. Are you not the prevailing side, Mr. Talbot?
Can I ask what the hell is going on right now? I don't know. And I'm a registered voter, and I demand to know what is going on right now. For the amendment to go back to the
Do we have a pen?
David, I thought it was, I thought we could
Yes.
Okay. All those who are standing up and sit down. If you wish to vote no, stand up and hold your card up. Hey guys. Brad? Oh, sure. All right. This is the result of the standing vote on the reconsideration of the vote on the amendment. 37 in favor, 9 against. The amendment passes.
I'd like to make a motion to restrict reconsideration of Article 23.
Second.
Motion made to restrict reconsideration of the vote just taken. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay. I think that's the end of the warrant, isn't it? We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Moderator.
Seconded? All in favor of adjourning? We are adjourned.